because he sings with such heart. You can just hear and feel every word he sings. So, Derek, I appreciate your music every week. So I'll get started. Hello, my name is Craig. I am an incredibly grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I came to Celebrate Recovery because of my sexual integrity, infidelity, and porn addiction. I was full of shame and guilt and felt like I had no real worth, no reason to live. Going through a 12-step study, I realized that my sexual addiction and integrity issues were just the way I dealt with my struggles with self-worth, fear, rejection, unrealistic expectations of myself, others, and life, PTSD from my childhood, fear of abandonment, and being molested as a child. I later admitted my struggles with codependency, alcohol, sweets, lying, stealing, passive-aggressive manipulation, and still more is coming out, but that's a life process. I do not identify myself with any of those things, and I have a new names now: Christian, disciple, father, husband, brother, friend, hobby, and servant. Hopefully after you hear my testimony, you will see how I got so lost and broken, and how God was in the middle of everything and every bit of it, and how He has blessed me to be able to share share His grace in my life. So let me just start from the beginning. From infancy, there was trauma in my life. They didn't even know if I was going to live. They told my mom that I may not live, and if I did, I may be mentally challenged, may not, and so would definitely not have a normal life. So my birth was hard, and I didn't understand how hard it was until I had my son, and he was actually fairly similar to my birth. I told my mom the story, and it was very similar, except for I got to be there. My dad didn't, because it was a different time. Also, along with that, I had an ulcer that was not detected, so I was in constant pain and discomfort. That I cried probably most of my first year, and that was because of the ulcer. My mom and dad didn't know what to do. The doctors didn't know what to do, and finally they figured it out. So you can just imagine the feelings even my parents had trying to comfort a child, and he couldn't be comforted, and as a baby. Along with that, other things in my childhood is I had, because of my development, my throat was not developed, which doesn't seem real big, except for the fact that it makes it very hard to eat. And so I was, I didn't like to eat a lot, and my mom didn't understand why. So she would force me to sit at the table all of the time. Everybody would be up and gone, and I would still be sitting there. And I would hide food in my pockets in different places, and then when I go to the restroom, I'd go down the toilet just to keep from being punished and getting in trouble. So lying and deceit were better than the punishment. So I went into survival mode from an early age. But going through with my counselor, and I talked about it, and that's when I realized that was important to understand. Is my body had just learned that it wasn't safe and that it wasn't loved at an early age. At age 6, my life turned around even worse, because at that point, my mom and dad got divorced. I felt like I had lost my dad and my best friend, but I didn't really understand it. And none of that, but my mom, from that point on, he was labeled as the Christ on earth, or the devil on earth. He was the devil on earth. And from that, it just seemed like a constant theme that men were bad. That was only the first of 4 divorces that she had. So for me, that made me think, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? I started feeling abandonment and low self-worth issues at that point. As a young boy, I struggled to have relationships, because my mom started a pattern of moving, so I had lack of stability. I went to about 18 schools, 20 schools if you count a couple different things, 18 schools before I graduated high school. So it became very difficult to make friends. On top of that, I had speech problems. I was in special classes. I was humiliated, and I was put in humiliating situations with teachers just for me to get up here and share with you guys is a big feat, because growing up in school, that was one of the things that just caused a lot of trauma and so forth, just because I could not, I struggled with that. And I was bullied a lot for it. I also had a birth defect in my right ear here. it doesn't bother me anymore. I don't even realize it's there, except for the fact that I can't hear it outside. But as a kid, that was a huge thing, and kids were not very nice with even the simplest of things, and it was so bad, I wouldn't even look at myself, and I wouldn't look at myself in the mirror, and I could not look at my ear. I wouldn't have told you what it looked like, because I was just so ashamed and embarrassed by it. I wore my hair down to here until I got into high school. I always had a really strange haircut. I was molested by my mom's second husband at around age 7, 8-ish. I don't remember that much either until recently, and I never realized why I had certain feelings, but God wasn't ready for me to remember that until I could handle it. I just remembered a comment that was actually made me feel special, and that was that he said, this is between us, nobody else will understand, this makes you special. And so I thought I was special, and now I realize now that it was a totally different meaning behind that. So at this point, my addiction was sugar. At this point, I would eat the Jello. I would sneak into the cabinet at night, and I would steal Jello packets, aspirin, anything sweet. It was gone. I ate the children's aspirin. If I remember the little children's aspirin they used to have, they tasted like orange, and they tasted good. So I would eat the aspirin all the time. That became my coping skills and helped me to feel better. At some point around 8-ish, also I had some of the bigger friends in the neighborhood where we were living. They older boys. They invited me into their house, and we were exploring one another. It felt innocent, but at the same time I also knew it was naughty and it was bad, but it was very confusing still. Around age 8 or 9, I was introduced to porn, and my sex addiction began. This caused a false image of women and relationships. I discovered it started with my grandpa. He had Playboys in his closet, so I discovered the Playboy magazines, and we would sneak in there all the time and look at the Playboys. Even my sister, my brother, all of us would. A little older, when Sports Illustrated swimsuit issues came out, masturbation became my escape. And I started idolizing them, and even that could be considered porn, and I didn't realize that for a long time either. It was the only thing that made me feel better was myself, through that. It progressed with MTV videos, movies, and so forth that fantasized and idolized sex. Also played a big part of that because I was very much a different child. I didn't have friends, and so everything seemed to be tied up in imagination, and that was where my imagination went. And it distorted my view of marriage, distorted my view of women, sex, and relationships. At some point, my mom's second husband, I already talked about the molestation on that. So more about my home life. My mom, because she was a single mom, she worked a lot. She'd have 2, sometimes 3 jobs. But she also she drank a lot. She was always tired, and I just remember lots of yelling, and she was very much a discipline. I got whipped with the belt on a regular basis. So at one point they actually called CPS because I was getting whipped by a belt outside because I missed a line mowing the yard. So we lived in fear to keep the house clean so that my mom would not be angry, so we wouldn't get yelled at. And my sister became really my mom, trying to keep all of that in check. So I got lots of belt spankings, other punishments, including 1 year when I was in high school, or maybe 9th grade, I think it was. I actually spent a full year in the garage in Texas, sleeping on a foam mattress, and that was my bedroom for about a year, because I was to blame for all of my brother's issues. My mom also used me as an example on how bad schools were. She shamed me and embarrassed me and disappointed me. I got a lot of disappointment from that. My mom, in the summers, we would spend a lot of our time in the summers doing essays for my mom, and she would grade the essays, and if you had a bad teacher that would write all over paper, it was like that, but it would be like that 5-6 times in a row, and it was a lot of rejection, but a lot of time just spent feeling like I wasn't good enough. But I made it to honors English. She was proud of me, but then she realized I still did not have very good English skills, And she would use me as an example all the time, talking about how bad our school system was while I was present. So I just realized that I pretended to be smart, I was really stupid. She worked a lot of late nights, so we were home alone as teenagers. Around age 16, my sister we would start having parties at our house, so alcohol became my escape. At that point, I would drink. I think I spent most of my sophomore year drunk, the entire year. It became my numbing agent to forget everything. It's important to note, though, that our mom did struggle with her own issues as well. She really didn't have any way of dealing with them. I know a lot of her history, I'm not about that, but she was a good mom. I have no doubt that she loved us, and that she wanted more than anything to truly want us to do our best. And so she pushed us hard, and I give a lot of the credit to me being able to do this today to her as well because of her pushing. Just the negatives also affect you. She loved us, and she did the best she could, and but she fought her own demons, her own addictions. So just parents, we're all going to mess it up, and that's an important thing to realize, that we're all broken, we all screwed up, and parents, you're going to make mistakes no matter what. At this point, to summarize, I was addicted to porn, and I was masturbating several times a day to make myself feel better and to escape fantasy. I used alcohol to numb the pain and sugar to make me feel good. I had very low self-worth, so in order to enhance myself and feel like a winner, I learned to lie, to steal, to cheat, and to manipulate to enhance myself in different ways and to avoid conflict. I lost my identity at this point, and I didn't know who I was compared to the child that I once was when I was younger, and I no longer even cared. I'd been bullied, abused, and felt utterly alone. Suicide became a regular consideration, and I began to feel like I would never have a girlfriend or any friends. Both my siblings had relationships, but I never thought I would, and I was very envious at that point. My drinking got worse and worse. Like I said, in my sophomore year, I was drunk almost every day. Finally, one night, I spiraled out of control. I had never done drugs, but I took pot for the first time, and I just heard my mom's voice in the back of my head saying that if you do pot, your life is over, drugs will ruin you. So I tried to commit suicide, and my brother had to come and save me from a bathtub full of glass. And I sat there in front of my mom, and she didn't say a word. She just sat across the table from me as I cried when I got home. Throughout this time, my brother and I were best friends. And like I said, my sister became my idol, and she was also my mom, more so. The summer between my sophomore and junior year was when we moved from Abilene, Texas to Garland. And I was working at Long John Silver's at the time, so I wanted to transfer to the one in Richardson. So I went into Long John Silver's, and I met this redheaded girl at the counter. So sweet, so beautiful. I went home that afternoon after talking to her, and told my mom that I met the girl that I was going to marry. Didn't realize I was a prophet either. So, after harassing her about her silly Christian religion, she would change my life by bringing me to Christ. This relationship also had a severe impact on our family. I kind of ran that together. I spent a lot of my time with Michelle, who became my wife, and my brother at that point felt like I had abandoned him because now I spent all my time with her and at church and doing church things. And so, and at that point, I was really his only friend, and I didn't realize how important that was to him. But he ran away at 13, and I was angry for him for many, many years because he ran away, and I thought he was being selfish. And he was, but I didn't realize that I was a large part of that at the time. Mom also blamed us for fracturing our family by going to church on Sundays instead of spending our family time. But we hadn't had family time for years before that, as far as I can recall. But I became the blame for it. And I was baptized in the spring of 1986. And at that point, it was a very momentous time. I really thought at that point that my life was going to be transformed. I would stop all my bad habits, all the bad things that I did in my life, and I was going to live easy, no problem, everything was going to be good. No. I continued in my ways, but I also then learned to pretend to be even more perfect. I learned how to wear masks even better than before, and the shame and the guilt would eat me up. I would continue to love God and hate myself more and more. I was involved in the youth when I got it, and I cherished those days, and it was awesome. I went to college to be youth minister, but I didn't stick with it because I had no faith in myself to do it. And so I dropped out. Also, my wife was we weren't married yet. She was back in Dallas and I was in Lubbock. That was probably a part of it too, but more than that, I was pretty good at quitting things. That would be a theme throughout my life. On June 15th, 1991, I married my high school sweetheart. The only reason, she was the only real girlfriend that I ever had, and she was my best friend and is my best friend today. I just knew, though, that at this time, that would fix my struggles, especially with sex, because we were both virgins when we got married, and so that was the one line I hadn't crossed. So I was looking forward to that, and so I was obviously very much looking forward to wedding night. But my distorted view of marriage and of sex from my years of porn fantasies caused me to struggle with intimacy at all, and at times it still causes me to. It causes issues with my ability to enjoy God's gift and intentions for sex. I would blame my wife for years because of that. I would keep searching for a fix because of this. My wife couldn't take care of my problems, my issues, and because of my blame for her, so I would continue to look outside my marriage at different ways to try to get that fix and to feed that feeling that I was looking for. I treated Michelle. I began to treat my wife like a doormat, and I did that for many years as well. My progression of my addiction and my integrity would spiral for years, lying about where I was, stealing in order to feed my addiction, and many other things. And I got some slides to put up on the board. The first slide, this is what a brain looks like. You see what a normal brain looks like, and then you'll see it on drugs, with alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, different various things. But if you look at the next slide, that's what sex addiction does to your brain. It's pretty much the same thing as alcohol and drugs. That was a very eye-opening moment for me. Sex addiction is real. Yet we normalize porn in our world and lust, things of that nature, especially, like I said, Sports Illustrated swimsuit issues are a good example of that. Everyone does it, was kind of the thought. But it does damage you. It is as dangerous a drug as alcohol or cocaine. The part of the brain affected by this addiction is connected to the reward system, causing you to be highly stimulated and then you become more desensitized, requiring more and more, causing a chemical dependency to get the dopamine rush. The dopamine rush from sex, from porn addiction, is the highest level of dopamine that you can get, but it's also the fastest crash you get. So you just imagine that up and down, it's how intense that can be. It also affects the part of the brain that helps with decision making, impulse control, rational thought, and makes it hard to resist urges. This is a topic that is still taboo, but we need to talk more about it, and we need to not be afraid to bring it to the light. At least 95% of men and 85% of women struggle from this sex addiction. Now, this is not an excuse or make my actions okay for what I did, but like any disease, knowing about it, you can begin to treat it, and the problem is the shame and the guilt. Also, along with the stigma of it, causes you to keep it even more secret. In 1996, I had gotten a job with Cracker Barrel, which took us out of Texas and moved to Illinois. I didn't know where I was going to go until near the end of my training, and that was when I took my wife out of Texas for the first time. Michelle had just given birth to our daughter, and that was our first child. So I took her away from her family, from everything she knew, and took her to a strange place. We were in Illinois. While we were in Illinois, we also became pregnant with our son. So we had 2 kids. At that point, shortly thereafter, I got transferred back to Metroplex, and while she was very pregnant, I made her move. So I made her pack while she was pregnant both times. So I put my wife through very difficult moves on her own. A lot of times she was on her own to some extent, and also dealing with pregnancy. We found a good church home when we got back to Texas. Placed membership at the church at the same time as another couple. They were pregnant with their first, our second, but their first, and we would become lifelong friends. These are the friends that these are the first and only friends that I had had until this point that would survive all the moves and the changes in our life. They helped us through several really bad times, including a split up for a while. We still consider them some of our closest friends, and they are incredibly supportive of this recovery journey. They recently were down here, and he had a heart attack while he was down here the other day for the 4th of July weekend, but he's doing better. Around 2007 was the first time that I would come clean to my addiction and confess it to my wife. And I went before the church and confessed it, because that's what you're supposed to do, is confess your sins, and you'll be healed. But I was a deacon at the time, and the church decided that it was best after my confession that I would step down from being a deacon, and that hurt and made me again feel judged and shamed. I was going to SAA at the time to try to fix my addiction, but it just didn't stick with me. Not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it didn't have really God in it. I just couldn't feel the connection, and I didn't give it 100% of an effort. I also was trying to keep a little bit aside, just as kind of that just in case, and of course I would end up in relapse. I separated from Michelle shortly thereafter, again partially blaming her for my issues and frustrations. She was not doing what I expected her to do. I also had also had others in my family that were also encouraging a divorce and to move on, because I convinced them how bad she was, and it was her fault as well. We fought through that, and through counseling, we got back together. During this time, we would try to raise our 2 kids, and to make things worse, Michelle and I would never see eye to eye on parenting and a lot of issues. It caused a rift in our marriage, challenges with our kids, and set us against one another. I struggled with guilt and shame, and my codependency wanted to make everything right. And at that point, it gave me skewed my priorities and my addiction and my kids. My priorities became addiction, kids, work, God, life, and then God. From 91 to 2010, I would go through several jobs, tried to get out of the restaurant business, got a job with Enterprise Rent-A-Car through my friend, lost that job 3 years later by manipulating rentals, and went to Service King, had several jobs. I went through a lot of jobs at that point, and the story, I could talk for hours about it. But I got fired from a restaurant for being unethical, stealing. Because again, to feed my addiction, it got worse and worse. I was finding other ways to appease to fulfill my addiction, and it just nothing was working. We moved to Waco. Again, closed down. We moved a lot. I'm just going to put it that way. While we were in Lufkin, our relationship between Michelle and my daughter had gotten even worse, and I felt it had become more and more toxic. We struggled to relate, and I was afraid of the path my daughter was on. So I felt my sister was in recovery at that point. She was a counselor, and so I figured she related really well to my daughter at that point. So I thought it was best if she go live with my sister, and against my wife's wishes, we went ahead and let her go to my sister's, and she became pregnant while she was there. Wasn't my sister's fault. Y'all know my sister Monica, it wasn't her fault. But the hopes was that she would get things turned around, but she went in doing this, she manipulated the situation because she had a boyfriend there, and that's what happened. I found out that she was pregnant when I came home from a mission trip with my son in Colorado. She married the boy, kind of shotgun wedding. They lived with us at the time because they were, of course, very young. She wasn't even out of high school yet. And about 2 months in, our world really got torn apart. He brought my granddaughter to me because he said there was something wrong. She had a seizure in my arms and went limp. I thought she had died. I told him to call 911 immediately. But it really hurt our family. But even in this, God was there. He is now in prison, but I continue to blame myself and wondered, what if I had done things differently? Where was I? What if I wasn't in the middle of it? I should have caught it. I should have known better. I should have done different things. Watching my daughter hurt, knowing the pain our granddaughter might be going through in life, was even harder to bear. She ended up getting adopted out, and we were judged by the church for doing that. But it ended up, it's an open adoption, and we have contact with her even today, and it's an amazing relationship. So God has been in the middle of that. We moved to Sherman and Denison. Shortly after that, my addiction spiraled even further out of control at this point. This is the way addiction works. You start thinking it's harmless, but left in the dark, it grows. Early on, it was just porn, then it became strip clubs, then it was massage parlors, modeling studios. But at this point, I had now turned to infidelity, along with contracting an STD that I did not tell my wife I had until after I got into recovery. I hated myself, but I just couldn't stop. I pleaded with God, and I begged Him, take the wheel, take this from me. I bargained with Him. I tried everything. It's like, if you take this away, I'll do this. I'll be good. But He would never take it away. And so then I started blaming God. I continued to look for an answer and an escape, something better, etc. But I wanted to attend. At the church we went to, they actually had a CR, but it was on Monday nights. I wanted to so badly to go to CR, but that was the one night I had to work at the restaurant I was at, so I never got to go. Suicide was more and more idolized. I was thinking about it on a daily basis because there was no other answer. I pleaded for God to help me and swore the next time again, but the addiction had a hold on me and then my heart, and I was way far from God. I wanted Him to take the wheel, but I wouldn't give Him everything. And that's the one point is I finally realized now that I needed to give Him not just one part, but every part of my life. I was blaming God. I had no hope. I was out of control. And only I could say is I can't. On March 19th of 2021, I decided I was done. I had plotted it out. I knew exactly where and when and how I was going to commit suicide. I was supposed to be dead that day. But I got a call from my sister about 1.5 miles from where I was going to kill myself, driving off the road, and told me that her husband had passed away. And that changed everything. This is when I realized that God had never left me. He was always there, and I just wasn't ready to listen to Him. I didn't want to give it all up. I was still in denial as I came to help my sister with the death of her husband. God put everything in place for a miracle to happen at that point. When I first came to Waxahachie, my thoughts were to have a clean slate. That included working towards the divorce of my wife. I still blamed her for a lot of things. I separated from Michelle for a second time, and I continued to believe the lies, living in denial, blaming others, and that our failed marriage was all her fault. I still struggled with my addiction, but after a while talking to Monica, she suggested Celebrate Recovery, and I got connected with John Lumley, and after he had shared the story with me, I knew I had to give it a try. I had tried everything else. This was my last resort. At the same time, I started a new career with real estate, which was a blessing from God as well, and the best job decision I've ever made. But it would have failed before. It would have failed before because I wasn't ready to turn my life over, and I would have messed that up pretty bad. Michelle and I had started counseling at this point. My intentions on counseling and my agenda was first to how I was going to get Michelle to change. How selfish I was. But as I started to go to recovery and do counseling, I learned that I needed to focus on myself, because that was the only part that I could change. Between marriage counseling, CR, and open share and 12 steps, I began to see how much I was keeping hidden and how much I had been blaming and trying to manipulate things to get my needs met. It was incredibly selfish. I still had not learned how to give everything to God yet. Finally, after our 12-step study, the leader played a song, Burn the Ships. And this is when I finally understood that I could not hold on to any of my past issues. I had to give them all to God. I still wasn't sure what that looked like, but God would begin to show me in small ways what that would look like. And if you're not familiar with what the song "Burn the Ships," there was back in the day, they would go to conquer or to fight a war, and they would go across the sea in the ships. After they would all get out of the boats, the captain would burn the ships so that the men could not turn around and go back. There was no way to go back, and so you were committed. And so I decided at that point that I was burning the ships, I was committing to this, and there was no turning back. So got rid of every vice, every small thing that I was holding on to, just in case. There was no more just in case. Since being in recovery, I have made amends with many of those that I have hurt, those that have hurt me. I have conversations that I would never have had in the past. And most importantly, been able to be there to share God with my brother, to see him find his faith and watch God save his life, leading him on a path of recovery himself. I know this would not have happened if I was not in where I was at. I learned finally that God can, and I learned finally that God did and can forgive me, and that I can be made pure again. I didn't have to keep living the way I was living. And even today, I learned that he has to do that for me on a daily basis. I learned the value of honesty and total transparency. My secrets kept me sick. Lying is always harmful. Some of these I stole from Chris, who's down front. He'll be giving his testimony one day soon, I know. But some of these little phrases he shared in small group, things that we've learned throughout the years of recovery. We've gone through recovery together, and it's been the most incredible journey. And one of the things I'll tell you is you cannot do this alone. And I think I say that somewhere here, but if not, I'm going to say it now. That this is not a program that you can do on your own. This is not a program that is a once and done, or it's not like other things. It's not like you get fixed and then you move on. This, to me, is what the church is supposed to be about, and that is being honest, being transparent, fixing one another, loving one another, seeing us through our brokenness, not to see our brokenness. Back to where I was at. Yeah, that's where I'm at. See, there you go, right there. Lying is always harmful. Complete truth can sometimes be hurtful, but it is never harmful. I know I can't do this alone. God must be my everything, and I do need my community. Mandy, carry my mat. Love you, Alan. I love that so much. Recovery is not easy, but it is so worth it. Living in addiction is even harder. This is not a come and get fixed quick and you're done. Once you choose recovery, you don't expect Satan to leave you alone. He will come at you even harder at times. Matthew 12:43-45 says, when the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through the waterless places seeking rest, but finds none. Then it says, I'll return back to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept, and put in order. Then it comes and brings 7 of its spirits from evil, even more evil than itself. And that's why. And they enter the dwelling there, and the last state of this person is worse than the first. So recovery is something the devil's going to come back, and he's going to try to get you back because he wants you, because he knows what the direction you're headed, and he wants to turn you around. So he's going to fight. He's going to fight hard, but we have a God, and he will fight harder. I thought I was too broken and too far gone for God to love me. And if you feel that way and are saying that to yourself, you're not alone. I was there, and I'm here to tell you that you are never too far gone. And I guarantee every person that has gone through this program has felt like they were the only ones. Nobody would understand my story. No one would understand. I'm worse than anybody, but I'm here to tell you that there's no worse than anybody, because you're all God's children. He doesn't make mistakes. I can't do it, but he can. I have to let him. But this does not mean that I sit idly by. My recovery is 100% God, and it's 100% my choice to take up my yoke and do my part. Most importantly, my relationships have been restored and become even stronger. My relationship with my wife, my kids, my church, and others. I have a community of brothers and sisters that I never knew I would have. They are now my forever family. I have been able to share my story, which used to bring me to shame and guilt. But now I can share it without any of that. And this has helped others to be restored. I've shared it with people that I've shown houses to. God has used me in different ways, and it's not me, it is God, because I don't know where the words come from a lot of the time. But it is God. He works in me. I just have to trust Him and His will for my life. A couple of scriptures to close out. Psalms 39, verses 1 and then 23 and 24. Verses 1 and then 23 and 24. O Lord, you have searched me. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. See if there is any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Matthew 5:6 says, Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Satisfied, I put. The world will try to tell you that it has what you need, that it'll offer all these amazing things, but the only way to be truly filled and to be satisfied is through Christ. Romans 8 and verse 1 says, There is therefore no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. For the law of Spirit of life has set us free in Christ Jesus from the law of sin and death. Verse 5 through 7 continues, For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on things of the Spirit. For to set your mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. For the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile toward God, for it does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it cannot. 16 and 18, the Spirit Himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with Him in order that we may also be glorified with Him. For I consider that the suffering of this present time are not work. The sufferings of this present time are not work comparing to the glory that is to be revealed to us. And in 24-25 it says, For in this hope we are saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For we hope for what we do not see, and wait for it with patience. 37-39 says, In all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. For I am sure that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor heights, nor depths, nor anything else in all creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. And in 2 Corinthians 5:17, Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away, behold, the new has come. Now, I have been in recovery from sex addiction and can say that I have lived with honesty and integrity for the last 4 years. I'm almost 2 years free from alcohol as well. And I just want to say, like I said, for those that are new, this is what God has you for a purpose. So God will use you if you will let Him. Thank you for letting me share my story.